Okay, so thank you for joining me both. We have Conor and Maddie. I'm going to let you both do a little bit of an introduction today, but thank you for joining. We're going to be talking about content syndication and going into a few kind of specific topics around what we're seeing with clients at the moment. So take it away, Maddie.
Yep, I'm Maddie. I'm an account director here at Headley Media. Headley Media, we're specialists in 100% digital in-house content syndication. I've had the pleasure of working with Conor now, extensively for a few years, as well as Headley and Just working together for many, many years. So it definitely seems like a good time to jump on and have a bit of a discussion about what we're seeing and what we're thinking and predicting for 2025.
Great. And Conor?
Thanks, Chloe. I'm Conor Bant. I'm Senior Media Director at Just Global. As Maddie said, been working with Maddie and the Headley team for a number of years now. At Just Global, from a paid media perspective, we work across a wide range of brand demand campaigns. So content syndication very regularly falls into our remit and is a real core part of what we do in driving results for our clients.
Excellent. So it sounds like I've got the best people to be talking about content syndication. So I think we're just going to start with a kind of a general overview of what's happening within the industry and content syndication and lead generation today. And then we can go into a bit more about what's happening and kind of key things to look out for at the moment. So what is going on today? Maddie, would you like to kind of explain a little bit about what we're seeing and how important content syndication really is at the moment in the B2B community?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, content syndication, I mean, Conor's going to be perfectly placed to dig into kind of how it works best and how Just Global really provide for their clients working content syndication alongside other channels. We do obviously get involved in that, but content syndication, it truly is our bread and butter. We see that, at the moment, our clients in kind of Q1 and driving across the rest of the year, they're still relying on content syndication for those kind of key benchmarks for marketing teams and professionals to know that, we offer that guaranteed lead volume. It's really important for an always on approach. It can really kind of offer a backbone of, predictable amounts of, if done right, good quality data coming into the system, all sorts of ways and approaches that you can utilize those leads once delivered. Definitely the good, the bad, and the ugly, but when done really, really good, we see such positive results. So it can really, really be, a backbone. But definitely, we do see a lot of success when working with our clients, whether they're utilizing kind of a white space approach, very broad targeting to learn and understand more about their ICP going into kind of a new year or starting out a new approach, or whether they've got an existing target account list and it's really about kind of drilling into that. There's obviously all sorts of ways that we can do it, but it's that kind of guaranteed lead volume coming in really is, really beneficial alongside all of the other, channels and ways in which that can be optimized.
Absolutely. Conor, what would you say are the kind of key benefits of using this type of tactic?
As Maddie said it perfectly in the sense that it gives you that guarantee and it's great for us, but also for our client in being able to say we will be able to guarantee this volume of first-party data coming into our system and also this number of leads coming through into our funnel. From our perspective, and I think it kind of goes both ways. One of the key things is to look at the kind of the expectation placed on these programs, and kind of making sure that our clients understand that yes, you do have that guaranteed lead volume, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee SQOs or sales ready ops or whatever you want to call them. So something that we're always really keen on to look at that kind of that broader piece in the marketing or kind of media mix is looking at how does content syndication play ball with the rest of the channels that our teams plan and activate to kind of give it the best chance of success.
Absolutely. That expectation setting part is obviously very crucial at the point of kind of inception, I suppose. I think there's lots of considerations and kind of some of the key challenges. So not to get into it too much, but Maddie, what would you say kind of a summary of the main kind of considerations around this topic?
Well, yeah, when it comes to onboarding, a new content syndication provider or working out the best approach, I think, yeah, as Conor said, that expectation setting is so important. It's absolutely paramount. Just because the guarantee is very much in the deliverables that you're receiving. The guarantee is not necessarily, it's not in the next step, the engagement levels. That is on, that next nurture stream, or whether that's in-house or through the Just Global team that's supporting. What we really believe in Headley is that because we are operate in-house and other and working with providers such as us, we've got full control and autonomy over the journey that each individual has been through. So although we cannot, there's no guarantee of SQL or MQL or whatever the different definitions may be, they vary vastly. That engagement, that next step in engagement is where we can offer the guarantee. What we can do is build feel total confidence and build that with our clients in the journey that individual has been on before being delivered. So if that where they've downloaded the content, the reason why they're visiting that site, not to mention more of the kind of nuts and bolts timestamps of what time and date that it was downloaded and how quickly that was delivered. So to set expectations is to say, what we're delivering to you is what has happened up till now. So if when working with suppliers such as Headley, at least you've got that confidence. And I think that's really important in setting those expectations of, what a deliverable is, what that CPI, what you're actually paying for within that cost per lead.
I think that confidence and kind of leading into almost the authenticity is something that we're seeing more and more. I think, with so much generally increased paid media online spend going through, and then the kind of the explosion we had with everything going online during COVID, the use of content syndication has become significantly stronger. It's become a huge part of just about every program that we're running. I think as that kind of increase of investment comes in, it puts more eyeballs on the what and the how and the why it's done. So increasingly we are seeing clients, although appreciating that guarantee, also wanting to query and question, okay, well, where is this lead coming from? Where is this data coming from? So I think that kind of trust is something that's becoming increasingly important. And I'm sure we've all heard the stories of different brokerages of data being sold through different loops and things. And from a user journey perspective, if we don't know where that lead has come from, we don't know the context and the environment that they've come from, that's going to impact their recall quite likely if they've gone through multiple loops and delays from kind of inception of downloading content to finally being fed through to a CRM or whatever your follow-up system is going to be. So I think that's something we're definitely hearing more from clients about, is wanting to understand what is the source of this lead, and that kind of plays into what does lead quality look like,
Definitely, because I guess
genuine.
Back to that expectation setting piece, lead quality is about what knowing where the lead has come from and feeling trust in its delivery, how it's come to you. Definitely, that's really positive to hear that from your side, Conor, as well, because I think in 2025 we are kind of already beginning to see and anticipating that lead quality, understanding where each data has come from and who's been handling that data, is shifting from a kind of a nice to have to absolutely essential, because like you've mentioned, the amount of paid media out there, budgets is more stretched, the pressure on marketing teams and individuals, professionals such as ourselves, every dollar is needing to count more than ever. And I think people have really, teams are really starting to learn that knowing where your data has come from is really going to make you as confident as possible. So it's great to hear from your side as well.
I think it really comes back to the quality, obviously choosing a quality supplier, but that is then reflected in the pipeline. It's reflected in the journey, the user journey of how they've come across the brand. Obviously, it's through your clients choosing a trusted supplier so that they can kind of start that journey, but then also how they're going to continue that. So I think that kind of leads in a bit more kind of Conor as to where these leads go, like the point of quality of them coming through being high quality, and then what happens afterwards. Can you give me a little bit more around that, the importance of kind of the following nurture?
Yeah, well, you could have the best quality lead in the world, and if it sits in a system and doesn't get touched, and one day someone makes a phone call to them, that quality just it evaporates. So for us, one of the things that's really key is looking at getting data into our systems as quickly as possible, so that touch is happening after. and then making sure that there's a robust follow up that isn't. Email is obviously core to that. That's kind of traditionally what the system, what follow up has looked like. But increasingly, we're driving our clients to look at a more kind of omni-channel nurture approach. So where email is playing ball with you create social activity with your kind of display kind of campaigns, whatever, and via various systems. And it's not just looking at, okay, let's say Maddie's coming as a lead. What is her lead journey looking like? It's also, if Headley Media is the business that she's in, as Maddie moves through the system, what does that mean for Headley Media as an account? So how do you nurture the individual versus nurture the account? And that kind of comes in at different points as the journey goes on. So it's a huge, long process. And there's all the research out there about sales cycles are getting longer, buying committees are getting bigger, all these kinds of things. So I think if anything, there's actually a huge opportunity for content syndication for guys such as yourselves to be able to extend campaigns, but also it means that the nurture process becomes much longer.
Okay, so we've just had a little brief interlude and we've changed backgrounds in some locations, but we've all good. We'll continue on. And we were on the discussion around nurturing and making sure that the follow-up that happens after leads have been generated is perfectly there. So thank you for explaining that to us, Conor. Maddie, was there anything else you'd like to add into that?
Really, just to say, it's super positive. That's why we really, it's so beneficial for us working with Just Global. We know that the leads are getting quick, being actioned quickly. Conor really touched upon that whole kind of account individual level approach is really thoughtful. Because for Headley Media, we want our clients, the clients that we share, to see success, and without putting that kind of next step in place, it's not going to be as optimal. I think more and more we do people are learning and understanding that content syndication leads as many ways that we can further qualify data, making sure that each individual has been through a more kind of nurturing brand ready journey. But you're never going to get call a spade, you're never going to get the best results from content syndication handing those leads and individuals directly over to sales without any other form of approach. So I think what Just Global are doing is clearly working, and it's really positive to see.
Yeah, I think that that kind of is sometimes a bit of a flag for us if we hear, we'll be sending these straight to a sales team. It's always good about what's the nature of what that follow-up looks like. If it is kind of additional content sharing or very, very light information gathering, maybe, but if it's the case that we're going straight in for a appointment kind of setting perspective, we know that means that the campaign's ultimately the recognition isn't there, the education isn't there of that individual lead. The likelihood that our campaigns can be viewed as successful is going to be lower. So yeah, we always do listen out for that as a minor flag, I'd say, in terms of handing leads straight over to sales. And it's not uncommon for that to kind of come in as part of pacing discussions of we want to have X number of leads delivered a week in order to avoid overwhelming our sales teams. And that's something that we would always want to flag is, look, we probably need to follow where the demand is, where the intent is. If there's a slight bit more interest in your content that week, let's kind of take that and follow that and kind of take that opportunity through further nurturing and kind of that omni-channel kind of re-engagement piece, as opposed to being completely driven by your sales capacity. We want to have more touch and more interaction of those leads before they're picked up, and then we would generally see a much higher engagement rate for that.
Definitely. And I think delivering the leads to sales, you're not going to see the results that maybe you expect. And Conor, I say, because again, it's that kind of it's a bit of a flag for us as well when working with kind of clients directly. But also you're losing out on a lot of opportunity. So all of these leads that are coming through are not necessarily a sales ready opportunity, but there's opportunity there to nurture them and get more out of them. So if you do just pick up the phone and kind of take that hard and fast approach, you're also losing potential opportunity for the future, which is much, much worse of a loss than the gain of potentially, getting some quick wins on the sales front. And yeah, definitely I've noticed that trend as well when clients are looking to kind of drip feed leads in small amounts and are getting quite kind of prescriptive over the number of data points being uploaded into their system, certain on week per week, etc. That sort of starts to correlate with those clients that start quite driven by sales team capacity. And although I can definitely understand that logic, it definitely comes with pitfalls as well. So that's an interesting point, Conor.
Yeah, I think we completely the way budget cycles work within the kind of businesses that we're working with together, we need to spend budget and utilize budget within the quarter or whatever the kind of the planning cycle might be, for a lot of financial kind of governance and compliance reasons. And I think it's more that case of there might be the opportunity where the one lead over could be a really good lead. It could be a perfect contact. It could be completing that buying committee view for a lower funnel account. There's a lot of scenarios and where actually going just over might actually benefit us. So I think it's kind of striking that balance of almost what we feel is the right thing for performance versus making sure we're kind of complying with what our collective clients need from a consistent pacing point of view. Because I completely get, even if the leads were great, if you see all of them on day one, that's going to create some worries for them.
Yeah, just it is about finding that fine balance, and sometimes that small margin can mean that you're losing out on a really excellent title, somebody who fits perfectly into the ICP, who isn't being delivered, and most importantly, really organic engagement. So if that individual has come through, but they can't be delivered because we've hit that kind of very strict pacing, it can just, though you never know, it's a numbers game, content syndication, but it's also about kind of individuals. So if you get a really positive opportunity come through and it hasn't been able to be delivered, at Headley we try to be as flexible as possible in those kind of cases. Obviously it doesn't do us any favors to just chuck away data. We'll think, okay, well, we're happy to offer that as just an added value, let's deliver that as well. But then obviously also systems are in place, which means that isn't possible either. So there's a lot of factors. It's definitely not a straightforward one, but just as with all, it's one of those factors to consider for sure.
Yeah, and kind of going back to that point of journey, if that lead takes you over by one lead and it means that lead then sits in, purgatory for a week before ultimately being delivered, that's a break in the customer journey or the user experience or whatever we want to call it. Even if they're not, obviously we're not saying they're here ready to buy, but if they've downloaded that first piece of content as a little hand raise, then we get them and then we nurture them, we're following up with something that's related. That's the start of the journey, and we don't want that kind of disconnect and delay so early on. I mean, lead decay is something that is and going again back to that whole authenticity point, that I think that's probably another thing that causes concern is people having sometimes lacking clarity or lacking comfort over how fresh are these leads, how recent was that engagement, and that's something that again is really important to us to make sure is we are bringing in good quality that's starting a good journey that can then be nurtured effectively for sales or BDR teams or however you approach it to follow up on.
Definitely. And if you are at Headley, every lead delivered has come through our suite of publications and fully traceable, etc. But for example, if you're running a single touch campaign, most clients will have a really strong, huge portfolio of content. But that if it is just single touch, that for understanding that when that individual downloaded that first asset, which one hooked them, that the key topic that got their attention can also be really valuable. So we're not then going to ever sit on a lead and deliver them a week later because they're going to have decayed, and that's obviously very important. But if they then maybe go on to download a second asset, then and we can deliver them later in the program, then that's going to have that's a different kettle of fish. But by that point, you haven't necessarily caught them when the iron is hot, and you haven't got that understanding of which asset actually disrupted their day and got their attention. So it's again definitely a fine balance.
Absolutely. I was going to say it's exactly that. It's the balance of everything, and you're just trying to offer them the best, most consistent and connected experience to the clients, because it's all very well, we know that the B2B buying cycle is, it's not the linear journey that a marketer would exactly want, but as long as the brand is offering that consistency of experience, and you can offer, you've partnered with somebody like Headley Media who's offering the right brand and reputation and publication, the right time, the right place, you don't want to lose that. There's so much to be said for continuing that experience, reaching them where they're at, and then using the information that you have to continue to nurture that on. Is there anything, Maddie, that you would say about that point, kind of creating this connected experience that's just key overall, if we bring it kind of back up to what what can be achieved with content syndication, kind of the key considerations there?
I mean, we talk about it a lot on our side, but we do, where has a lead come from? I know we've already bandied that topic around a lot, but I really mean kind of how they found themselves into being delivered to you. So when they downloaded that content, what content piece was it? I know I just kind of touched upon that just recently, just a moment ago, but what was the publication that they visited? What was the journey that they went on? So I know kind of whether that was through a supplier such as Headley that has a suite of online publications, and kind of each publication had its own dedicated subscriber base, and you kind of understand why they are what you understand why they're subscribing. It's to learn about HR tech, cybersecurity technology, etc. Or whether it's more of a microsite based supplier where there's kind of micro contents hosted on microsites and where they've come across it, just making sure that as best as possible it was a joint up positive experience for each individual, and you've got a real understanding of where they come from. Like you said, Chloe, it's not linear, it's not a science. We can't always understand exactly, but just knowing as much as possible, having that confidence of kind of a bit of an understanding of the why behind where all that data has come from. I think thinking about the content is really, really important. So for content syndication, as we've already painted an important picture of, the leads that are being delivered are always going to be top of funnel to a certain extent. And though the styles of content that you can use is really, really vast, it is really important to remember that it's about getting that initial interaction with the individuals, and making sure that it is slightly more top of funnel. Although at Headley we do work on kind of two-touch campaigns, or where we're doing a little bit more of the nurture on our side, and to a certain extent we will make sure that the first touch is something sort of more top of funnel, and then gently nurture them through and give them the option to kind of engage in something more product focused. So when we're delivering the lead, Just and the team have got an idea of kind of a bit of the journey they've been on. At the that's always going to only take us so far. So thinking very much about what once we've delivered the leads, which content pieces are coming next, I think is really, really important, because not all content is created equal.
Yeah, definitely. I think having that understanding of the journey that they've already been through, what they've already been exposed to, and then almost matching that and providing them with something complementary after that to then continue that journey. Because if they've seen, two very interesting but generally kind of top funnel high level pieces, and then the second they come into our client system is it's a very heavy sales led buy this right now piece of content, again you've got that disconnecting journey and you've not kind of educated them enough, you've not given them enough touch points to really get them to that point. So for us it's really important to look at how we follow up in terms of what the content piece is looking like, and I guess almost how heavy handed the approach is. If it's a top of funnel single touch lead, we know that's going to have to go on a much longer term nurture kind of drip. Whereas if, for example, as Maddie touched on, the kind of the nurture on the Headley side has been more around multiple downloads, multiple questions answered, there might be intent data layered in. If we see those triggers in the lead delivery, then it will adapt what the nurture should be. And then maybe we could go to a slightly accelerated approach where maybe we do go into that kind of middle funnel and ROI kind of, or whatever content it might be earlier. But it is just all about, we can't have that one size fits all of every single content syndication lead goes through exactly the same process. We would want to have a look at different entry points and different ways of nurturing dependent on the data points we'd receive from, our partners such as Headley Media.
That's definitely music to our ears over at Headley, because you can sometimes sense that when a campaign's being built out, the kind of enhancements, the data that's being downloaded, whether that's two touches, you mentioned Conor, the questions, it can sort of sometimes feel like those signals are being gathered, but what is being done with them next? So when you run a slightly more qualified campaign, content syndication campaign, those key signals were how they've answered questions, what they've chosen to download. We hear anecdotally, and from our clients and clients that we share with, we hear that the success is when you and the team have really channeled into those signals that we're delivering, whether that's kind of intent questions. The idea, I really like what you said there about not the idea that every content syndication lead is not going to go on the exact same journey. If that was the case, then there wouldn't be too much point gathering the kind of signals when we're doing those more qualified campaigns. So that's definitely really positive. I like that.
If we've got those data points as pieces of information, as little bits of intel that we can use to kind of shape and tailor our follow-up, if that means they've answered a given question, like they've downloaded a given piece of content, there's within our nurture and CRMs, automation systems, there's triggers that we can pull dynamic content insert based on this different answer, this different piece downloaded. That allows us to again tailor the experience and make it much more relevant, which again you're hoping will be then reflected in opens, clicks, engagement. So then by the time it goes through to sales teams, it just gives it that bit more chance of success. And I think also is really important is, although we've got all those different levers we can pull on, going back to one of the things we said right at the start around expectations around content syndication, even if we do layer all those additional touch points in, we'd still be reticent to go to a, guaranteed X amount of pipeline off the back of this, straight off the bat, because we still do need to do that nurturing piece and all those different questions, multiple downloads, etc. Although it does represent a higher quality lead, it does also kind of align with where buying patterns and behaviors are going. Again, we've got loads of research around the volume of kind of self-service that's done before people engage with sales teams. So much more of the vendor selection and decisioning is done before they even engage with a person. So, there's almost an argument that the amount of kind of touch points, those multiple downloads, those question answers, all those pieces, there's almost an argument that actually before too long, that will have to become the norm. That will almost replace the single touch lead as the top of funnel, because there will be so much more self-service kind of work done.
Absolutely. Everything that you've just said is it caters towards like the whole personalization and making it really relevant for each of the contacts going through, each of the leads that are going through the system. And I think 9 times out of 10 it will be with an ABM list in mind, at the start, kind of just as you're mentioning. There's a whole lot that happens before the campaign as well as after the campaign. So I think that kind of succinctly ties it all up as to, there's so many considerations here, and kind of diving deep down is really where you're going to be able to optimize and be able to kind of make sure that the best success is achieved.